Every successful female entrepreneur gets asked, how do you balance family and business? But rarely is that question asked of successful male entrepreneurs. And we can attribute that to the patriarchy. We can attribute that to traditional gender roles. But for guys who take their job at home seriously and want to be present fathers, but also successful businessmen, that question still applies. And sometimes we're still trying to figure that out. And so today on the Blueprint Podcast, we're going to interview Kevin Barnett, who is the founder of a revolutionary community here in Houston that is equipping men of all ages how to be better fathers and also how to grow professionally. And so we're going to talk about, how to grow as a father, grow as a businessman, professionally as a creative, and answer the questions a lot of men have about fatherhood and business. So welcome to the Blueprint Podcast on Architect Network. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the podcast, Kevin. Excited to have you on. You've actually been someone that I've been pinpointing to be on my podcast for a while now. And so I went to a CoolxDad event, was able to network and meet you, meet your team. And there was instant connection, right? I think I understood what you were trying to do. And I appreciate you guys just, inviting me in, just meeting me. And so let's just get into it, man. Like, what advice do you have for, men who are trying to balance family and business?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. And first and foremost, thank you for having me on the podcast. Yeah. I always try to attribute that question first and foremost to, are you spiritually connected? Mm-hmm. I think for every household, we need to ensure that that's the first thing in order. Mm-hmm. We got to make sure that we are connected and tapped in, because without the man above, mm-hmm. we're kind of unbalanced, right?
Right.
But for me, outside of ensuring that's taken care of, you got to also look at your dynamic. You got to make sure that your wife and your children understand the importance of what you bring to the table. And as a father who continuously looks into finding ways to evolve, I need to get that feedback and information from my family, because they're the ones steering me in that direction.
Right.
So I like to always encourage fathers and men to really look inside first, because we get so much distraction from the outside world pulling us with information. I mean, we're in the digital age. We have information at our fingertips that we sometimes get lost in and forgetting where our core responsibilities start at. And I think that's the first thing that I would always give as an advice, is to look internal, look to your family, look to your immediate community, and get information from them on what they want to see, from you, because they have your best interest.
Okay, so that's kind of self-awareness, and then also just getting that feedback is kind of where you would start out for someone. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the narrative of black men and fatherhood has historically been kind of negative. You look at the black male, and it's kind of been the absent father has been kind of the branding that we've had for as long as I can remember, right? But I think that's starting to change. You got guys like Belief in Fatherhood and Toby Nwigwe who've really built their brands with showing them involved in their families, right? Yeah. And I think that black men are, from a public narrative, are embracing fatherhood, and I think we always have. But I think from a the narrative and what we're seeing in the media, everyone's kind of like seeing, okay, it's cool to be a father now, right? Yeah. So what's causing that change, and why do you think that's happening now?
Well, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head. It's always been there.
Yeah.
Right. That narrative, that stigma, is something that was kind of placed on us, right? And I won't go into those type of conversations today, but for me, what we're seeing publicly is exactly why CoolxDad is so needed right now, because fathers are way more present than they've ever been in their child's lives, in their community, and what we need right now is a space that can help amplify that and encourage that, and help to provide resource or access to people that need it, right? Because you may not need it just because you're down and out. You may need it because you're just looking for a village to, connect with, to give back what you were fortunate to have.
Yeah.
But we're seeing, the stigmas being eradicated now, and we're waking up and we're shocking it. And I'm excited about, all of these fathers that are stepping up and they're just doing it the way that they wanted to either see it in their lives or the way that they know it's always been.
Right.
So it's just a wake-up call, and people are just catching up basically at this point.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've noticed, I think, is education. I think is a huge piece. I think a lot of men, didn't necessarily learn from their fathers how to be great fathers, but there's more resources out there to help them learn the things that they didn't learn, right?
Yeah.
For that, I was, fortunate enough to have a great father, right? So there's a lot of things I learned from him, right? But I also now get the compound interest of learning from him, other men, resources, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, you're set up for success. So obviously that's going to pay off in being better fathers, and it's worth talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, fatherhood is a hot topic. I'm in the grocery store pushing the kids around shopping, and you're getting those looks like, oh wow, how great for you, and that to me was kind of one of those moments where I was getting frustrated about that, because I'm like, why can't I be doing that, or standing out on the line waiting for my daughter to come out of school and picking her up, and seeing that I'm the only male, there, and now I'm seeing more fathers at pickup, or seeing more fathers taking their children out to the park or to a play, and being present. And that to me is the exciting times that we're in right now.
Love that. I'm going to read here a study from Pew Research Center, and it showed that 57% of today's dads treat fatherhood as a focal point of their identity. They scored just a notch below their female counterparts. In the same article by the Daily Star, it declared that millennial dads are the best generation of fathers. And that's exciting news. That's the kind of stuff we want to read, right? Yeah. So it looks like more men are taking responsibilities in their kids' lives, and becoming better fathers. But I think, what do you think about becoming better partners and leaders of their families, right? Because I think, the evolution, a lot of people are doing co-parenting, when marriages fail. So like, I think fathers are like, when it comes to their kids, they're on it, right? What struggles do you think are causing men to still maybe even struggle when it comes to being a partner, or even just leading their family as a whole? Does that make sense?
No, I mean, it's 100%. Again, it's so relevant to why CoolxDad exists, because we put a lot of emphasis on ensuring that our children, the youth, are set up for success. But once they hit, that age of adolescence and becoming an adult, what happens, right? They're left to fend for themselves. And most of the time, speaking specifically right now from the boys, right? They're also being instilled from young that they have to kind of man up and don't show emotion and have to figure things out on their own. And that's where we start to see the ball drop in the responsibility that these young men are now running away from, right? And why we see the fatherless child dilemma as being an epidemic, right? We want to provide access to these adults, to these people that who are raising these children, because they need the support. They need the support, and quite frankly, to me, more than the youth. The youth got school, they got mentors, they got people looking out for them in the community. But who's looking out for mom and dad?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's where that's where we step in. Yeah. And we're providing the wraparound around that caregiver, that father figure, right? Because we want to ensure that they're equipped to go back in the household and meet their child where their child's at.
Wow.
That to me is why it is so relevant to the work that we're doing today.
Okay. Yeah, and so let's talk a little bit about CoolxDad, right? Because I think the two biggest things every black man wants is to belong and to provide. We want to, and some of this is cultural. That's a cultural expectation, right?
Yeah.
Like, and some of that's also an innate desire to, hey, I want to belong to a tribe. I want people to accept me for who I am, right? And then also I want to provide. Like, that's the innate male characteristic to go out and feed the family and be the protector. And those are things that we're all looking for. And I think, like, historically, the narrative is that, again, we failed at that, right?
Yeah.
You know, black men, we've looked for belonging in the wrong places, you know, whether that's gangs or,
Right.
you know, the corporate world and becoming workaholics and all these things that we've looked for to find that meaning, right? With that belonging. And I think CoolxDad, to me, I gravitated because like, okay, that's a place I think I can belong.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So talk about how that belonging, how does that impact other areas of your life? How does that belonging impact your ability to lead your family, to be a good partner and a good father and to be a businessman? You know, stack up on top of being a man. So how was CoolxDad like really in creating that space for men?
Well, I mean, I think it starts from our pillars, right? Mm-hmm. Maintaining identity, nurturing loved ones, leaving a legacy, and community building. So in every CoolxDad member, any father that I've had a conversation with, I'm seeking that right there. I'm trying to figure out what pillar do you belong, and then I'm gonna pour the other pillars. If you don't even have the ability to even see it in yourself, I'm gonna pour those other pillars inside you.
Right.
And I think that's the barometer, right? That's how we know where we're gonna go. But for every father that we're speaking to and every father that kind of interacts in the community, they feel it naturally. So there's a tug in their interests that continue to bring them back. They may start off where they just came to an event. They saw it on Instagram, Eventbrite, somebody invited them, but they didn't really participate, right? They weren't talking about their feelings or expressing where they're at in their fatherhood journey. But something tells them, man, this was pretty cool. I'm gonna come back to the next one. And that's just that thread that we're continuously pulling on. And then we're just unraveling, hey, where you're at in your fatherhood journey, how can we be of service to you? Right? As a father, we don't hear that. How can we be of service to you? Right? And that's where I think the interest level of why people are pouring into CoolxDad and why fathers are finding themselves here. Right? They can be their authentic self. Right? I'm not asking them to be anything other than who are you?
Yeah.
And once that kind of becomes, a recurring echo in their mind, the magic starts to happen, right? Now they're bringing ideas to CoolxDad. Hey, man, Kevin, I think, we should do this, or, I'm really good at finance, and I really think I could be of interest to the organization and some other brothers that may be looking for this in their lives. Right?
Yeah.
So we're self-serving.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so timely because we're coming out of a time in history where everyone was disconnected. You know what I mean? And so that we already had that innate want to belong.
Yeah.
And we're already struggling to find that. A lot of the guys in CoolxDad I've noticed are creative men, right?
Yeah.
They're men who have that entrepreneurial drive. And sometimes that's a lonely field to be in, right?
Oh, come on.
So you're talking about being lonely, not really having the support you need as a father, you know what I mean? Having to carry the weight of your family. Having nobody else in your family can relate to that. You're the only one, right?
You're the only one.
You're the only one. You're the only one in your business, right?
Yeah.
You're the only one in, this creative expression that you have. And so all that stuff's to pile up. And now you add a pandemic to it, right? So I think so many people are coming out of that. And, we're 2 years past that, but still the hunger is still there, right?
Yeah.
And so I think naturally you place CoolxDad in front of you and people are going to gravitate toward it. And I think you're already seeing that. I mean, you guys are getting national attention from organizations like the Texans and, the Rockets. And I think a lot of even larger organizations are seeing, okay, we see the value in community, right? So I think as a narrative, I think we're coming to grips that community is not only like a nice thing to have, but it's needed. As humans, we got to have it.
Well, community is the definition of what any organization will need to scale, because it's the community that supports, right, them progressing to be who they are, right. And I think what the pandemic showed the world is that we need community, period. Right. And we're starting to now be more self-aware about the mental health support, the financial stability, right? Like, pandemic really put that at a in front of our face, larger than we've ever seen it before, and a lot of people started waking up. And for me, that awakening for me was that, well, who's our leader? where's our leader? We're like, for our community, minority community, who's standing up and saying that we're going to build an ecosystem to support our needs. And I feel like that's what CoolxDad is. And we're bringing a fresh approach to the nonprofit sector because we operate and feel like a brand, right? And that's culturally intentional, because if I'm going to create a space that's meant for us, well, we have to speak the same language. And CoolxDad speaks our language, right? We utilize fashion, entertainment, creative services. Like, all of these are tools for our ecosystem so that we can put back into support and resources.
Which I think that then connects to that next piece of what every Black man wants, is to provide, right? And I think a lot of, entrepreneurship and business is the method of how we provide for our families, right? Again, culturally, expectations, but then also it's just sometimes in us, right? To just like, hey, go create commerce, right?
Yeah.
Bring something to the marketplace. So within the community of CoolxDad, there's like this equipping, mental health, all these resources you described, but then there's also this kind of almost an incubator for business, being able to network with other business owners, being able to equip the man to be a holistic person, which means you're going to be your best in every area. So talk about just even that piece. We started this conversation talking about, balancing fatherhood and business. How can someone grow their business or grow professionally if they're in a 9-to-5 being connected to CoolxDad community?
Well, I mean, it's access, right? That's probably one of the biggest differentiators for the Black and brown community, right? Is give us access and watch us scale, right? And for CoolxDad, it was all about just creating access, becoming that bridge. If you're a father who's working a 9-to-5, but you have that innate ability to provide and you want more for your family, CoolxDad will give you access to individuals that have done it before you and now want to see you succeed and win. So they'll provide access, if that's information, if that's actual resources. They're going to give you those tools so that they can see you be the best version of yourself. Yeah. And I think that's bottom line who we are, right? Because in the nonprofit sector, we get caught up in these categories, right? Underserved, at risk, underprivileged. We get so caught up in those categories that we start to really box ourselves in those nonprofits, right? They box themselves in and just saying, well, we serve this particular category. So what about everybody else on the spectrum that's not in that category that you could touch or find ways to utilize them or support them? So for us, we were like, no, we're not categorizing our community, right? I don't see our community as any of those categories. I see our community as men or caregivers that are conscious enough to see that they want better for themselves, for their families, for their community, and all they need is just a hand up, and that's just access, right? And I'm meeting them right where they're at, and then we're providing what's their need.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that word access, because I think I met one of the, owners of a restaurant. It's one of my favorite restaurants in Houston, right? Like first event, and he's just right there. And I'm like, you the guy? Like, you know what I mean? It was just like, it was just cool to be able to see somebody who's at the highest level of their craft and they're just a handshake away, right? It's not like this, like, kiss the hand type thing where it's like, oh my God, who's in the room? You know what I mean? It's like, yo, these are just normal men who are doing their thing, right? So, and I also love that you don't have to be a father to be a part of CoolxDad, right? I'm not a father and not trying to be a father anytime soon. Right. Praise the Lord. That's all I did too. But I think, like you said, it doesn't matter where you're at in the stage, right? Because I probably will be a father at some point, right? And so I'm learning from you guys, seeing it modeled, getting access, so then when I am ready, I have the tools that I need, right? So that's really powerful. I think that's another differentiator. Compound
interest, right? You said it best. As a young man exploring this world and, trying to lay yourself up to be ready for that next chapter, you're already a leg up. Because in this ecosystem, you have so many other fathers that are ready to just pour into you now. Not when you have your child, now. And provide that access of like, hey, here's the trials and tribulations that I went through that you won't have to go through now, because now you have someone telling you and steering you in that direction. You know, there's that running joke like there's no manual to parenthood, which there isn't.
Yeah.
But there's actual documented stories that you can learn from.
Right.
And that's what we're sharing in the ecosystem. So yeah, we're not just Cool Dad, this male-centric, dominant space just made for fathers, right? And that's why we intentionally spelled our name with the X, breaking down the gender identity, breaking down the walls of saying, hey, we want this to be more of a philosophy, a way of life, than it is just focusing on that particular father.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think the cool thing is that you guys are actually cool too. You got the fashion going on. You know what I mean? The events are always in well curated space. So there even is an attractiveness about the way the brand looks, right? And the way the brand feels. The marketing looks amazing. The people are amazing. You know, so there's like even multiple levels of what it means to be a cool dad.
Yeah.
I love that. So final question for you. What advice do you have for new parents trying to raise their kids in this current generation?
Be present. Be present, because our children have access to everything. Point blank. They have access to everything. And if you can be present in seeing them in their journey, you can plug in and start learning how to speak their language. But more importantly, you can show them and model the behavior of what you're trying to, you know, cultivate around them, because the digital age is not going anywhere. And we as parents have to adjust to it, because our children, that's all they know. So if we can be present and try to really, you know, fine tune our approach to meeting our children where they're at, I think we can see a better, you know, society and growing our children and putting them in position to be the next ones to take the mantle. Yeah,
I love that. And one thing I want to add to that, because you said that's the very beginning, being emotionally present, I think is so powerful, right? Because I think a lot of times there's fathers who are there, they're just not emotionally there, right? That emotional presence comes from building your own identity, getting connected, finding the needs that you have, right? Being able to recognize that as a man, you have needs. You have needs for community. You do want to belong. You do want to walk into a room and feel like the people in that room embrace you no matter what. Like you're quirky, whether you make a lot of money or you don't make a lot of money, whatever it is, you want to walk into a room and feel that, right? And so being willing to be self-aware. So whether that's if you got to go to therapy to learn how to be self-aware, or whether you got to just practice the skill set, the resources, the tools are out there. But be a cool dad. Be willing to learn who you are, find the needs that you have, and go meet those needs so that you can then be a full tank for your family, and you're not giving them what's left after the job or the other thing. So being a holistic human, being able to pour into your family. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to get more information about Cool Dad, we're going to have that in the description. Feel free to check out on Instagram. I think it's where the biggest platform you guys are on right now. And then if you have questions about fatherhood and business, if this just scratched the surface for you, you're like, man, I need more, let us know in the comments what questions you have, what topics you want us to talk about, and we want to provide that resource to you guys. So thank y'all for watching. Thanks for tuning in to the Blueprint Podcast on Architect Network. See you next time.